Cameron, what's poppin'?
Hi, how are you?
I am so great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
So you were mentioning you feel really, really good today. Tell me why you feel so good.
Well, I've been, I'm pregnant right now. I'm 31 weeks today. So we're like getting close to the finish line.
Congratulations.
And pregnancy is mentally difficult for me. It
Uh-huh.
like heightens my anxiety and depression. And so I've been in a bit of a funk, but I don't know, this past like week and a half, I feel like I have a little bit more wind in my sails. There's momentum. I feel a little bit more like myself. So I'm just riding that high. I'm like riding the wave.
And you're pregnant during the summer. I had one of my good friends. She was pregnant and it was summer outside, and she would call me up and say how miserable she was carrying this
It's
baby
so
and
hot.
in Texas.
Oh no, 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 no,
Right.
no.
Exactly.
Yeah, I am an August 27th baby. And this entire summer, I've been like, Mom, how did you do this in the end of August in Manhattan, 9 months pregnant? Like, at least I'm only 7 months. But yeah, I gave birth to my first son at the end of May. So I never was pregnant during the heat of the summer. And it is definitely a different experience. I will tell you that much.
Different experience. Go on.
Well, it's just hot. But when I was pregnant with my first, I was able to like rest as much as I had time for. Like if
Mhm.
I wasn't working or doing something that needed to be done, I could just be horizontal on a couch or on my bed. And now you're chasing after a toddler. So it's very different. It's not nearly as restful or relaxing. I will say that much.
And it's not even just that. You're chasing after the toddler, and then you're essentially dealing with your body and all the changes or maybe the feelings that
Yeah.
you may be feeling. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Which is a real
Yeah.
thing. And I don't necessarily feel like, dudes understand it. If that
No.
makes sense.
You know what? I they don't, and I don't think, I'm not saying like it's anything necessarily on them. I don't think anyone understands it until you go through it,
Hmm.
quite honestly. But yes, even my husband, he's like, what an eye-opening experience it has been to watch you go through these two pregnancies. And even for myself, I know I texted a lot of my friends who gave birth before me, or even women that I used to work with who I would sit in a corporate setting next to every single day during their pregnancy, up until one literally left work at 10 a.m. and delivered before we had left the office at 5. Like, she was there until the very end. And I texted them being like, I never understood what you guys were going through and how hard that must have been for you to show up every single day. Like, it's mind blowing. Like,
You know what's
superpower.
interesting? What's interesting is how some people will just have a baby, right? And then be back to work 6 weeks later,
Nope,
which
it's never gonna be that.
I don't even understand how that even works.
It shouldn't be that way, but in the country we live in, it's somehow what is considered normal. It is interesting. On my platform, I talk a lot about this. And when I talk about postpartum and my plan for maternity leave, because it's confusing working for yourself and all of that, I have a lot of Canadian followers, and they will message me being like, my mind is blown. The fact that you're saying you're going to give yourself 8 weeks, like 8 weeks, we get 10 to 12 months. This country is backwards in many ways. And that is just one of the ways that I think so much change needs to be done. And yes, of course, maternity leave, but also just general parental leave. Because if we're
Hmm.
only giving the partner 2 weeks, that's then all falling on the birthing person after that period of time. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I could go on this.
And you, not even that, you're just like trying to handle your own emotions, just dealing with that. And you're the
Mm-hmm.
person that just went through this whole pushing this baby
Yep.
outside of your body. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And if you have a C-section, that is like intense, seriously traumatic surgery that takes a long time to recover from. Yes, so does a vaginal delivery, but there is so much physical recovery that needs to happen on top of the mental and emotional, on top of caring for a child.
Mhm.
So, yes, more time is needed for all. I will say that much.
Are you someone who suffered from postpartum while delivering or having after your first baby?
It's interesting. I, right after having my first son, felt like, oh, this is what I was meant to do. We are great here. It was my husband and I and our son in our apartment. It was still kind of peak COVID time. The vaccine had just been rolled out, and we just kind of like hunkered down in our bubble. And I really focused on like, as long as we have all eaten, slept, and pooped, we're doing freaking amazing.
Right.
And I was so proud of us. And I still am so proud of how we handled that period. I really struggled when I was trying to return to aspects of my former life. And that's when I did struggle with postpartum depression, in the sense of feeling very confused of who am I? What is this new world I'm in? How will I ever return to the outside world? How am I supposed to act in this outside world? Like, what do I bring to the table? I had a very serious identity crisis. And I had thought, going into postpartum, I was very aware of postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety, just because those are two things I had struggled with prior to having a child and getting pregnant. And I was medicated, and I had spoken with my psychiatrist and therapist the entire time. And what we hear so much is, oh, if they put the baby on your chest and you don't feel connected and you have the baby blues. And that's kind of how I think postpartum depression is depicted. And that may be the case for some, but it's not the case for all. And so for me, it was very confusing to go through this stage in more of like the months 4 to 6 postpartum than fresh out of the hospital. So I definitely had a hard time with that transition, and I'm hoping it will not be the case this time around, because I am so deeply tied to my identity as a mom, and my life has already shifted in so many ways. And I think that from speaking with all of my friends, going from 0 to 1 compared to 1 to 2 is way more of that identity shift. And obviously there are other things I can struggle with, and I'm not ruling out any of that. But for me, that was definitely the hardest thing, figuring out just who I was now that I was somehow responsible for someone else.
Right. I can see the pressure of that.
Yeah, the
Just
pressure.
only being responsible for yourself for years, and then all of a sudden, here's a baby. And let me tell you, there is no amount of schooling or you carrying around the egg that can prepare you for it.
It's crazy. I remember when we left the hospital, I turned to my husband and I was like, so we just leave with this baby now? Like,
right.
What? No one like told us exactly what to do. Like, they sure teach you how to put on diapers and like swaddle the baby in the hospital, but you don't leave with some book on like, this is when you feed, this is how they sleep, this is what you do in this. It's such a steep learning curve. And when people ask for advice who are pregnant, it's hard, because I'm like, you can do all the reading in the world, which I didn't, but you can try to prepare as much as humanly possible, and you're still never going to be prepared for the moment that you actually are leaving with that child in your arms. And it does change you, and you kind of have to learn as you go. But it's funny now, as we're preparing for our second, thinking back to how we felt preparing for our first, like how terrified we were of all these unknowns. And now we're like, yeah, we'll figure it out. We've done it before. Of course we will. We know how to do this. So it is a very different mentality, at least I feel, going into this second birth.
Cameron, you're not new to this. You're true to this, okay?
Oh my God, I love that. I'm going to write that on my mirror.
You're not new to it. You're true to it. But I do want to ask, for parents, for moms specifically, that are listening and watching this right now, and they are dealing with, some of the postpartum blues or the depression. What are some of the tips that they can use to get over it, essentially? Because I know it's not black and white.
No, it's not. And everyone's is so different. It really is individualized. I am a huge proponent of professional help, first and foremost. Speaking with your doctor, building out your team. As I mentioned, I've been on medication for both of my pregnancies the entire time through postpartum. So I am a huge, huge proponent of professional help. I also think, for me, one of the things I had the hardest time with, again, concerning that identity shift, is never having any time for myself anymore. You're going from your whole life, or most of your life, really focused on like caring for yourself and working around your own needs, to suddenly being thrown into focusing so intensely on someone else.
Right.
And it seems so silly because it's an overused saying, but you cannot fill from an empty cup. Like, you really cannot. And so for me, it was trying to find little moments. It could be 5 minutes. It could be going for a 30-minute walk by yourself, or it could be I would have a playlist of music that made me happy. I'd put on noise canceling headphones in the morning. I'd get up a few minutes before our child did. I would put them on and I would dance like a lunatic in my apartment because I was like, this is a way that I will start my day to make me happy. And so for me, I was choosing activities that helped me find joy and tap back into myself. So finding those little things, whether it's journaling or meditating, exercising, walking, speaking with a friend, small things that you're doing solely for yourself really helped me carve out that space to be me again, honestly.
That's amazing. That you I guess you went on that journey to find out what works for you. And I feel like you have to be proactive about it, is what
You
I'm
have
gathering. Yeah.
You have to, because it's really easy, especially in the newborn phase, especially to just give, and completely forget that like you are a human with needs as well.
Do me a favor and tell me about the Freckled Foodie and Friends podcast.
Yes, I would love to. So I started it. Now I honestly think it's been like 4+ years the show has been on, which at the time I remember thinking like, oh, I'm late to the game. Everyone has a podcast. And now I'm like, okay, now really everyone has a podcast, which I love. The more the merrier. I started it originally because I felt Instagram stories were limited to 15 seconds. And every time I was talking about something, I'm like, I just want more time to dive into this. I kept having to be cut off by the story. You couldn't record like multiple frames at one time. You couldn't save drafts. It was honestly pretty annoying to have like in-depth conversations on your stories,
Right.
which is how I kind of utilize my Instagram stories, almost like I'm FaceTiming with my friends. I'll prop the phone up and I'll just chit chat. And I also felt like I was having really intentional, interesting, educational, informative, fun conversations with these badass people in my life. And I just wanted a place to have that longer form content live. And my joke is that my like 3rd grade teacher, I think it was, wrote on my report card, if I sat her next to a wall, she would talk to it. Like, I can just go. So if you give me a microphone, I will not shut up. And
I feel the same way.
Yeah. Like when I record my solo episodes, people are like, oh, do you have notes in front of you? How do you prep? I'm like, no, I sit down, turn on my mic, and I black out for 45 minutes and I just talk. I don't know what I'm saying. Somehow it turns into a digestible episode.
But for the record, it is super fun being here following your stream of consciousness, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Go on.
But I go everywhere. Like in my solo episodes, at least I have you to kind of like land the plane by asking questions. In my solos, my ADHD brain is in 10,000 places at once. But the show started honestly just because I wanted a longer format in terms of content and conversational based. And it's grown in many ways. I started it while I was still really focused on my food journey, whether that be through digestive health or like recovery of orthorexic tendencies and breaking the claws of diet culture that had been so deeply rooted in me. And through that has grown as I've gone on the journey of pregnancy, postpartum, becoming a mother, and now pregnancy round 2. So we kind of cover like every topic under the sun, whether it's parenting stuff of like talking about having sex as parents or struggling with body image during a pregnancy or feeling lonely during a pregnancy, to having on founders of companies who have really inspiring stories, to even just having on some of my close friends and talking about friendship and what's important to us and how we've maintained such strong bonds over the years. So it's kind of all over the place, which is hard when I try to do an elevator pitch for the show, but it's a really fun show, I think, to listen to. And based on all the feedback I get and how I feel speaking with my community and even recording the episodes, is there is this communal bond of the listeners who I reference as the FF fam. Like they are ride or die, the best people ever.
Orthorexic tendencies.
Yes.
I'm sitting over here. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to jump down this rabbit hole.
Let's go.
Please go.
For me, I struggle with my digestion in my early 20s. I was working in the corporate world. I had moved to New York. I just had a slew of digestive issues. So I started working with like a functional medicine practitioner and an eye doctor. Yeah. And it's very common for young females, especially. And so with that, I was on all of these elimination diets, and the intention was good. I was trying to figure out what was causing all of these gut health issues and like severe bloat, constipation, like all of these things. The intention was good. But the impact was that I then became obsessed over every single ingredient that was going into my body, because on these elimination diets, you have to track everything. You have to be very careful. You know, you're trying to figure out your triggers, and it just became obsessive. And also, as an anxious person, I felt like it was something I could control. In reality, it was like very much controlling me. But in my head at the time, I thought I had control over it. And that tied in as well with exercise. I had been an athlete my entire life. I played sports at a D1 level. It was always just part of my identity. So when I graduated, I was like, wait, what do I do now? And so I dove headfirst into my like gym routine, acting like I was training for freaking Olympics, obsessing over how far I was running every day, just beating myself up as a very competitive person. And I did not realize until I kind of was able to take a step back and really look at it from an outside lens, how much brain space all of this was taking up for me, and how much more anxiety and therefore GI issues it was actually causing.
When you were doing these elimination diets, were you not able to eat like fast food or things like that? Because
no, oh my God, it was so specific. I was on this diet called a low FODMAP diet, and it's actually great for people who are really struggling. Like, there is a reason it exists, and I wholeheartedly believe that. But like, I was not able to tolerate garlic or onion. So it was that specific, where everywhere I was eating, I was asking about the seasonings that was going on everything. So let alone fast food, that was just like out of the picture. But even at restaurants, of just getting like roasted vegetables, it was like, well, what seasonings going on these vegetables?
there's definitely onions and garlic and powder.
It's the base of everything.
We're absolutely 100%.
Yep. Yeah. Which is, honestly, I look back at this time and I'm like, it messed with my brain intensely, but I'm also grateful in a sense for it, because it got me to where I am today. And it forced me to start cooking in my kitchen, because I was just getting so overwhelmed with speaking with every staff member at every restaurant or takeout or whatever about the ingredients, where that's when I actually started Freckled Foodie as an account, because I was cooking in my kitchen. I was like, oh, this is fun. Let's share this. And so it's transpired into what my business is now, which I never could have imagined doing when I was working in a completely different industry at like 21 to 26. However, it wasn't that fun at the time.
Absolutely not. Like, who wants to go? Not to, but essentially, who's trying to go through all of that?
No. But you got to go through some times to get on the other side.
Correct. 100%. Do you find it extremely hard to talk about yourself and be as transparent as you are online on your podcast and everything? It's not.
No. And it probably should be. Like, there should be some concern. I actually talked about this in a recent solo episode. Like, why does it feel so comfortable for me to tell strangers all of these things about myself? But here's the thing. There are things I keep to myself. Like, I think there's this confusion where if a content creator or someone you follow is transparent about something, then you feel you deserve or everything. And that's not the case. There are things in my life that happen that are absolutely kept sacred to myself, mainly things that are happening with my family, my relationships, my in-law, like those types of things. Those are not things that I'm going to get on the internet and just like blast out there, because they're not my story to tell. But things that are my story to tell that do not deeply involve others who I love, who are more just things that I'm working through personally, I feel very comfortable sharing that, because I'm like, if I can put that out there and help one person, and based on my DMs, the amount of messages I get helping way more than one on certain topics, then like, that's incredible. My job there is done. And I don't feel any sense of shame. Sometimes I'll say like, oh my God, I'm going to have a vulnerability hangover after this, because I just said so much.
Right.
And it is hard to put it out into the dark hole of like the internet, where you're going to get all sorts of opinions, and you can't necessarily control the people who are going to receive it or what lens they're going to receive it through. Because I think that's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's that everyone's going to receive it through glasses that they already are wearing with their own predetermined concepts or opinions of you. You could say the same thing to someone that someone else says to that same person. And if they love that person, they're like, I understand. I'm here for you. And if they don't like me, they're like, you suck. So, whatever lens they're wearing is how they're going to perceive me. However, the ability to connect with people and help them through what they're working through by just laying my stuff out there, like I will do that 10 times out of 10.
You know what my whole takeaway is from that conversation is that
What?
you're comfortable in your space.
Yes,
And yourself. You're 100% comfortable in it.
I am. And it's taken me time to get here. I don't think I always was, but I will say when I first started this account, I was very adamant on like, I'm going to show up as myself, because if I create some character or persona that is not true to me, and I have to then like muster up the energy to put on that facade every day, I'm not going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Personally, I just can't do that. So it's like, if I show up as myself on here, whether it's a good day or a bad day, and I'm just me, then I can maintain this. And like, this could be a longer term thing. But if I'm putting the pressure on myself to look a certain way, or for my background or aesthetic to be XYZ, it's never going to work for me, because I will be like, I'm done. This isn't worth it.
Tell me, what are you working on next?
Well, cooking a baby is the main focus in my belly. So for me, honestly, I'm in a big stage of my life where I'm focusing on my family with this pregnancy and upcoming delivery. Like, that is the focus. And then I do have a lot of things that I want to work on when I come back from maternity leave, because for me, during pregnancy, it's kind of survival mode. I'm like, if I can stay afloat, that is a huge freaking win in terms of work. I don't feel as creative. I don't feel as driven. I don't have that extra push that I usually do and love. So within the next year down the road, I would love to potentially start writing a children's book. That's something that's like really been calling to me over the past year or so. I would love to continue to grow my community, my podcast, and focus more on that. I do actually have a collaborative product coming out within the next week that I'm so excited about, because I've always dreamed on doing a form of collaborative product. And this is my first one with a brand that I love, and it will make so much sense when I'm able to publicly share it. So that's something I'm really excited by. But honestly, just continuing to grow and evolve. And I try to not set these like, I need to do this by X amount of time, because we have no idea in this industry what is going to be next. Like 3 years ago, we didn't know what TikTok was. So it's like, I need to be willing to adapt to what is happening and figure out how to maintain my community and grow my community and stay myself on these new platforms that are arising.
Got to keep evolving.
Yeah, it's hard. Oh my gosh.
I know, and I hate every bit of it, but it is what it is.
I feel so old sometimes. I'm like,
another thing. Oh, another thing that I will lose sleep over. It's the worst.
Yeah.
Cameron, thank you so much for jumping on and chatting with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great. It was so much fun.
Thank you.